UFC 300, what a card that was, man. What an event. From start to finish, just a really solid card. No complaints about it. There was only, a stall in the action here and there. Mostly every fighter executed their game plan really well, and it was just a great card. That's all I could really say. Speechless at some point, so let's talk about it. We started off the card with Cody Garbrandt versus Davis and Figueiredo. Um, that fight was really unexpected for me. Just because Figueiredo really used his grappling a lot more. I thought Garbrandt would be able to stop those takedowns no problem, but it just looked like they hadn't drilled that, which no surprise to me because it looked like Figueiredo more recently was just focusing on his striking, but he kind of flipped the tables around and took Garbrandt down, submitted him. So kudos to him. And moving on, there was Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. That fight kind of went as expected. We know Jim Miller has a lot of heart, but we also know that Bobby Green is great at catching guys coming in, which is what he did all night. He caught Jim with a lot of beautiful straight right hands, jabs, just really used his distance really well. Had Jim very badly hurt at the end of that third round, and it was just really a dominating performance from start to finish. Jessica Andrade and Marina Rodriguez, that's another fight that kind of went as expected. Didn't expect Rodriguez to have as much success as she did early on, but eventually Andrade took control of the fight and got an easy decision win. Next fight on the early prelims, Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano. Now this fight went as expected too. Jalen Turner hurt Moicano on the feet. Moicano stayed tough, won a lot of the grappling exchanges, and then eventually won by a TKO in that second round. Just a few mistakes from Turner in that first round, man. Had Moicano hurt on two different occasions, and especially the second time around, just didn't capitalize on it. Just kind of let him get back in the fight, and he eventually paid for it. I mean, he kind of focused on celebrating instead of actually finishing the fight, which was unfortunate for him. But, great job on Moicano, absolutely. I'm excited to see his run for the title. You could tell that guy is fired up when he gets into those post-fight interviews. He had another great one yesterday. Just awesome stuff from Moicano. Just from the post-fight interview to the grit and the performance. I'm excited to see what this guy does when he starts to get closer to that top 10. And that closed off the early prelims. Now we move on to Sadiq Youssef versus Diego Lopez. Boy, what a fight there. I mean, Lopez had him in the clinch. It was pretty even. It was early in the round and landed that right uppercut, and that was really it. Youssef was able to gut it out and get back up again, but all it took was another one to land, and that was pretty much the end of that fight. Really surprising result, but a great job by Diego Lopez. And next fight was Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. It's just Holly Holm just keeps struggling against these grapplers, man. It seems like not a lot has changed, unfortunately. The only grappler she was really successful with was Ronda Rousey, and since then just hasn't seemed to have been able to really tighten up that part of the game. Her grappling's great. It's not a matter of that. It's just when she's defending against the likes of Harrison or Nunes, it's a struggle for her. Always has been. Miesha Tate too. So just really unfortunate for Holly, but a big win for Harrison in her debut. So kudos to her. And moving on, we had Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling. This fight went as expected for sure. Sterling came in. He looked. He looked better. He didn't look quite as lean as he did when he was weighing in for 135, but he looked overall better. He had a little bit more fat on him, which also helped his muscles pop a little bit more. You could tell the hydration wasn't a problem anymore. Just looked really strong in there for this weight class, and he manhandled Calvin Kattar from start to finish. Just a dominant win for Aljamain Sterling, and a great job for him in his featherweight debut. Excited to see what he's got there. I think as long as he keeps utilizing his grappling and doesn't rely on the striking too much like he did against Sean O'Malley, I think he's a top contender in featherweight for sure, no doubt about it. And then moving on, we had Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. This was another one that we got right. Like I suspected from the Blachowicz fight that Rakic had, kind of knew that his chin would be open to getting hit with some of Yuri's big punches, especially from those weird angles. But he did a really good job early on, and Rakic, kind of had it almost to where, kind of worried early on there, like, is Prochazka going to get his game going, or is he going to just get picked apart from the outside here? But once Prochazka kind of got frustrated, found his range, stepped in, once he started landing those shots, it was only a matter of time. So big TKO win for Prochazka. I don't think he's quite ready for another fight with Alex Pereira. Absolutely not. I think he got hit a lot in this Rakic fight, and it really doesn't take that much from Pereira to get another knockout win over him. So I think there might need to be some adjustments to be made to Prochazka's game if he's going to stay at the top of that division for very long. In just a second, we'll move on to the main card here. So moving on to the main card here, we have Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage. Surprising first round, the beginning at least. Though Bo Nickal was able to wrestle him very well, like we all expected, I'm sure. His striking is very clear, not necessarily up to the top 15 standard right now in the UFC. He did get hit with a few shots that maybe he shouldn't have. He looked a little uncomfortable there, but he weathered the storm, and he controlled Brundage on the ground and got a fairly decisive victory over him by submission. So good fight there to start off the main card. And moving on, we had Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. Just so close, man. Charles Oliveira almost had him in that first round with that guillotine choke. Nearly had Arman mounted with that guillotine. With the camera angle and everything, you could see Tsarukyan's face. He was really grimacing hard. He was, you could tell he was really trying to fight not to tap there. Just incredible first round work from Oliveira. But when it moved on to the second and third, though it was a little back and forth, Tsarukyan really controlled that second round and most of the third. But again, in the end of the third round, Oliveira almost had him again. It just depends on how you score the fights, man. To me, based off of the fact that Oliveira had the bigger moments, I still think he should have gotten away with a win there. Especially considering the third wasn't like the second, where Arman did a lot of damage to Oliveira's head on the ground. The third round was mostly Arman just trying to grapple him, not really having too much success, and then Oliveira eventually trying that submission with 20 seconds left. So, it really depends on how you see the fights. What do you value more, control time, or do you value the person coming close to a finish with a submission? And I think if you value the submissions, then, Oliveira was the winner. But Tsarukyan had more control time, and I guess that was enough for last night. Is he ready for Islam Makhachev? I don't think so. Time will tell. But at least his striking early on didn't necessarily look that great against Oliveira. He did fairly well, but particularly in the grappling, it's going to be a problem if his grappling isn't really tightened up, because Islam has submissions too. Just overall, I know that Arman has grown a lot as a mixed martial artist here, but so has Islam. He's been improving in every fight, so that's important to keep in mind as well. and Islam was able to finish Oliveira much quicker than that. So it's just something to keep in mind. Moving on here, we had Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. This was another, obviously, not only was it a great fight, but it was also just surprising to watch, you know. For Max Holloway, of course, there's always a chance that, the guy that's coming up a weight class who has less experience can get a win, especially when they're a former champ. But the question was he really going to be able to dominate as effectively as he did? It was the best Max Holloway that we've ever seen, no doubt about it. His footwork was excellent. His defense was really good. He didn't get hit as much as he usually did in the Volkanovski fights. So his defense was on point, footwork was on point, and his striking was on point too. He was doing a great job with those body shots, those hooks, and those straights to the body. And then he was also doing a great job controlling the range with his jabs and his straights. Just really an excellent performance from him. Pretty flawless. He got hurt maybe once, I think, in the third or fourth round. But other than that, it was all Max Holloway. So excellent performance from him. And then that crazy last 10 seconds where Max tells him to throw down with him in the center of the cage. And then Max gets a knockout with 1 second remaining. Unbelievable to watch. Stood up off of my seat after that one. Just really incredible to see. And all the times that Holloway has offered that up to opponents like Ricardo Lamas, I never thought it would actually work, but it worked last night. History was made there on a historical night, UFC 300. So just an incredible performance from Max, but this really raises some questions. Like, Max went from losing 3 fights to Volkanovski to now he's in a situation where Topuria is the champ, and not only are people gunning for Holloway to get that title shot against Topuria, but also at the same time, he just beat in reality the number 1 contender at lightweight. I know technically it's Oliveira, but still, technically that's the number 1 guy, because that's who everyone was talking about that Makhachev should fight next. So what's next for Holloway? Does he get 2 title shots in a row? I say why not? Give it to him. He's a former champ. He's paid his dues, and he keeps getting better. Really outstanding job from him. It's just so strange how that worked. You had him against Poirier a few years back. Wasn't really a true lightweight yet, and Poirier definitely dominated most of that fight. But it's strange, even though Justin was able to beat Dustin, it's almost like Dustin's more of a problem for a guy like Holloway than Justin Gaethje is. It's just MMA math never works, man. Just styles make fights, and that's it. But and as for Gaethje, it's a shame. I think there was a lot of mistakes made here. Even taking the fight instead of waiting for that title shot, I think was a mistake. Bum rushing him in the first round towards the end, which led to him getting that spinning back kick to the nose, which broke his nose, I think. And then on top of that, just kind of getting just a lot of reckless moves during the fight cost him everything. But as usual, Justin Gaethje will be back, no doubt about it. This is a loss to a former champion, so not a lot lost here. He's still one of the best lightweights in the world, so let's see what both of those guys have in store soon. Now moving on here, we had Weili Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan. This was, most of the fight went as expected, though Xiaonan has a lot of heart. I think it's actually pronounced Xiaonan. I don't want to mess up the name too much, but first rounds, Weili almost had her done. Once the bell rung, you could see that Xiaonan appeared she was out from the choke. But to me, it was like maybe she was just on the verge of it, but she was able to get up. So I don't know why the analyst team was making such a big deal about it. The commentary team. At the end of the day, if the fighter is dazed, there's been fighters dazed from punches too. If they're able to get up and get back to their corner, and they can stand and they're not falling over it or anything like that, then I see no issue with them continuing the fight. The only controversial thing was apparently the doctor in the corner of Zhao Nan said something along the lines of, "Do you want me to wake her up?" And as if he had some, and then they mentioned like the smelling salt or something that they would use to get her alert again. Is anyone let me know in the comments, is that allowed in UFC competition? I don't think it is, especially considering this is the same, martial arts that, caused a big problem for fighters and with the whole Vaseline situation when it came to grappling. So I don't see how Vaseline would be not okay, and then smelling salts would be deemed okay. It just doesn't make sense with the commission to me. I don't see that happening. So let me know in the comments what you think of that. I think that the fight probably should have been called right there then. I've just never heard of that in any UFC fight. And if it wasn't allowed, honestly, the fight should have been called right then and there. Because if Zhao Nan had came back and, beat Weili Zhang later on in the fight, which she could have done because Weili started getting tired from honestly just dominating the fight so much, especially on the ground, then that whole fight would have been called into question. So I don't agree with that in MMA. I think that that shouldn't necessarily be allowed. But nonetheless, Zhang was able to, as she usually does, get another big win. So hats off to her. Moving on to the main event, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. One left hook was all it took, guys. That was all it took. Just real eye-opener, this fight. I had a lot of faith in Pereira when he was signed on to fight Prochazka. I thought that he would do a good job of controlling the range like he did and just eventually catching Prochazka coming in. But I thought Hill was going to be a different story, man. Not necessarily saying that I was 100% into one guy or the other, but in reality, I did have a feeling Hill was going to win this, but just wasn't what I expected at all. All it took was that one left hook. I thought that maybe, I knew that Pereira was still very powerful, but I didn't think that, it would carry over 100% to light heavyweight when there's all these other guys in the division like Blachowicz and Rakic. But honestly, it did. The powers carried over, and it might even be better from just being less dehydrated and stuff like that. Just really unbelievable. What was that, 2 minutes into the fight? Just crazy stuff from Alex Pereira. And then that little celebration he did at the end there where he kind of just went to Hill, I guess signifying how simple it was to get that fight out of the way. If you're a fan of any other fighter in the light heavyweight division, I'm an Ankalaev fan and Blachowicz fan, but man, if you're a fan of any other guy in this division, I don't know. If this guy really sticks around at light heavyweight, he might not get beat for a really long time. If you could do that to a guy that's paid his dues and made it to a championship, and you could land your first left hook that wasn't even flush and knock him out, forget it, man. Forget it. I think he has a really good chance of winning any fight in this division just based off of that shot alone. Just that magic left hook, man. That touch. He's got that magic touch. I don't even know, what to say from here. I think the next fight for Pereira is definitely Magomed Ankalaev. That's the next fight to make. Ankalaev's definitely earned it. How do I think that fight's going to go? Not to really ramble on this too long, but even that fight could be called into question here. I think Ankalaev, if he could grapple him, he can make it interesting. But, the problem is those leg kicks. Ankalaev did a horrible job defending them against Blachowicz. We don't know how much damage he's still carrying from that loss or draw too. So not only is the potential for his leg being damaged even more for this fight, raising some doubts about how he would do against Pereira, but just in general, just the momentum Pereira is riding right now, all the knockouts and that brutal left hook that he keeps landing on guys. I think it's definitely the fight to make, but I really don't know here. And I'm an Ankalaev fan, but after that fight last night, I don't know. It's hard to really go against Pereira right now. That's all I'm gonna say. And I know that there's a lot of talks about him eventually going up to heavyweight and fighting Aspinall. I think that'd be great too, but maybe let's go back to when there's valid contenders in a weight class. Let's let the contenders fight the champion. Let's give these guys a shot. Too many title fights have been, not made, especially like, and a lot of guys have been kind of overlooked in the past, and it's got to stop. We got to go back to the way it was in the 2009 and pre-2009 days where, hey, if you had a number one contender, that was the guy who fought the champion. Not these double champ fights. Those are great, but they should really only happen if there's no other choice. Like if every other contender's injured or, that's really when it should happen. It shouldn't just be like an automatic thing when a guy becomes champion and just have him fight the next division up or down. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Because to me, it's like you look at guys like Beneil Dariush, Tony Ferguson, guys like that who had valid title shot, calls, yet what was the division busy doing? Doing these double champ fights that we didn't need, that were amazing to watch, like the Volkanovski versus Makhachev fight. But let's be real here. They need to fight the contenders first. The contenders come first, no doubt about it. We can't have these situations where Dariush and you guys like Dariush and Ferguson just fight their hearts out to get a title shot, and then before next thing you know it, they're getting old and they start getting hurt and they start losing. It's got to stop, guys. But yeah, that was UFC 300. Definitely exceeded expectations, I think, in a lot of people's minds. Just looking online and seeing some of the reception it's been getting, and I kind of had a feeling it would. The fact that maybe the card didn't look as appealing, I think, was an advantage to it, and I think people realized how good these fights were once the day finally came. So outstanding card. Excited for UFC 301 as well. There's a few good fights on there that we'll cover very shortly. Hopefully we can cover them soon. We'll do the prelims first like we did this time, and then we'll move on to the main card eventually. But that was UFC 300. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. If your predictions were right, if there was anything interesting you noticed that I didn't mention in the video, definitely let me know so that we could talk about it. And leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe if you did like the video. Until next time, see you later.